When I apply for a job or a school, or maybe when I register for an app and it forces me to list my gender pronouns, it's forcing me to participate in.
Dude, are you kidding me? Come on. Come on. Oh, boo-hoo. Oh, boo-hoo. Oh, woe's you. You have to list your gender pronouns. Oh, no. Oh, the baby. Oh, no. Oh, no. So we found this guy, Brian Holdsworth, last week, a struggling Catholic thinker, apologist, writer, speaker, communication professional. He's very professional at communicating. So professional, in fact, that he managed to successfully convince me that priests shouldn't be gay. And I forget which other video we watched. We watched another video, but yeah. So today, we're gonna watch his video called How Gender Theory Self-Destructs. Now, I'm very interested in this because I'm not a big gender theory guy, quote unquote. I just think that gender should be abolished. I think it's a useless social construct. I don't think that we have much, use for it anymore. It's just outlived its usefulness, basically. Sorry, that's like 3 different ways of saying the same thing. But basically, I don't think about it a lot, but I'm interested in hearing what this guy has to say about it because he's kind of become one of my favorite lolcows lately. So let's take a look at what Brian Holdsworth has to say about how gender theory self-destructs.
If you want to identify the core principles of any belief, theory, or ideology, you'd be on the right track if you sourced your information from its leading thinkers, obviously. So, for example, if you want to discuss the theory of evolution by natural selection, well, Charles Darwin would be your guy. If you want to describe Newtonian physics, well, Isaac Newton. And if you want to describe modern gender theory, or even just the popular notions about gender that we hear enshrined in media.
You can discuss evolution and you can discuss any idea without bringing up anybody that it's associated with, by the way. Just because Isaac Newton came up with, what did he say it was? I forget. Just because Charles Darwin came up with evolution does not mean that you have to invoke Charles. The number of times that I've thought about or brought up Charles Darwin when talking about evolution compared to the number of times that I've talked about evolution is like a very, very low ratio. It just does not come up that often.
Narratives, then you should cite people like John Money, who argued that...
Oh boy, John Money. Okay, I should have known that was where we're going. So for those who don't know, basically John Money, I don't know everything about him, but basically this guy is some kind of psycho researcher who did this experiment on kids whereby he took 2 twins that were born male, I believe, and then he switched their sex to female, or raised them female, and they didn't jive with that because he literally tried to trans them, and so he's going to, this whole video basically, let me predict it for you, it's just going to be John Money was a freak and he was bad and he did a bad thing, therefore everything that he said, even though he also breathed air, which I also am breathing currently, everything that he said was objectively wrong and bad. This is another one of those Hitler breathed air, therefore you also breathe air, therefore you're Hitler. Just because John Money was right on a couple of things does not mean John Money was a good person. Just because John Money was a freak who did terrible things doesn't mean that he, everything that he said was incorrect.
Gender is a social construct. Or Judith Butler, who said, masculine and feminine roles are not biologically fixed, but socially constructed. Or maybe Dr. Az Hakim, who said,
I don't know the rest
gender
of these.
is a psychosocial virtual entity without location in a person's body. It solely exists and is perpetuated by the society in which the person lives. So to summarize, they're all arguing that gender is a social convention or a social construct.
It literally is.
Rather than something grounded in objective or observable reality. And if it doesn't exist outside of our own conventions, then that must mean that we get to define what it is and how it gets applied and how we use it. In the same...
He's got a pretty good grasp of this. I'm surprised. He's studied this quite a bit. Interesting. Let's see how he dismantles it.
Same way that popular Christmas traditions are social conventions. Not to say that the reasons for celebrating Christmas are merely invented, but that the specific characteristics of the festivities, like cards and lights and food, those are all conventions that exist for our own purposes and can just as easily be adapted to different conventions if need be. And because they are conventions, that means that they must be voluntarily participated in. No one should be forced to
Gotta say, his drip's not great this time, but it does look better. I do like the very simple sweater. It looks much better on him.
Adopt or participate in any kind of social convention. To impose social conventions on anyone involuntarily would be tyrannical and certainly contrary to the ideals.
So you're not imposing social conventions on people by insisting that you're a woman. They can't know whether or not you're a woman unless you tell them. Like, that's the only way anybody can know whether or not you're actually a woman or not, you know? Like, regardless of what genitalia you have or anything. Like, women who identify as women and were born cis, you know, if they're cis women with, like, facial hair and deep voices, you know, just, like, look at butch lesbians, for instance. You know, like, a lot of them have, you know, deeper voices or... you know, they dress very masculine or have facial hair or maybe even be on T. You know, like there's all kinds of wibbly wacky stuff that can happen with gender and sex. So you literally, and again, I bring this example up all the time. I've mistaken old people for the opposite sex that they actually are. It's happened, okay? And not even just old people. It's been young people too. I've mistaken people for the opposite gender or sex. And then they correct me. And then I say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. My bad. And that's it. We move on. I don't sit there and be like, well, actually, I clocked you. You know, like we've been through this before.
Of liberal democracy, which I think is something most of us have bought into. Like, imagine if the government told you that when you gather as a family on Christmas, you have to sing these particular songs together, that you have to eat these particular dishes.
They literally tell you, like Christians literally tell you that you have to do certain things, like go to church on Sunday. Like that is a thing that they will literally enforce upon you at the risk of like maybe not excommunication, but definitely social ostracization.
Is prepared the way that we tell you, and that you have to marathon
where the Christian
Hallmark
theory
Christmas
falls apart
all night on Christmas Eve.
Checkmate,
You'd be right in
Christians.
thinking, that's a violation of our rights. And it's on this basis that gender theorists can argue that traditional notions of gender based on traditional beliefs about the nuclear family, that those are mere social conventions that should not be imposed on people who do not conform to them. This is how we dismantle the Christian paradigm of traditional values in order to instantiate something new and innovative or progressive. Now,
It's not new or innovative or progressive. Gender has existed as long as gender's existed. For as long as the construct itself has existed, there are people who have been trying to get like escape or venture outside of the construct. I do that. I literally do that, okay? And my T is as high as anybody's. My testosterone levels. Like I have a beard, I have a deep voice, I'm bald. Like I am a dude through and through and I identify as one, and yet I'm a nurse, which is traditionally a women's position. I crochet, which is traditionally a woman's thing to do, you know, like and I have earrings too, which is also considered traditionally feminine to do, you know? So like my point is, as long as there have been gender constructs, there have been people venturing outside of it, always and forever.
I don't agree with that claim, but if that's actually the argument that they're going to rest on, and at least from the sources I've cited above, that seems to be how they're advancing their cause, then they've already shot themselves in the foot. They've already pulled the rug out from under them. They've already sawn off the branch that they were sitting on. I don't know any more ways to say that they refuted themselves right out of the gate. Because if that's true, if gender is a social convention that is determined by our social preferences, in other words, we invent it and it conforms to whatever vision we impose on the world, and if it's tyrannical to impose a traditional convention on anyone in a liberal democracy, then it's just as tyrannical to impose a progressive notion of gender and sexuality.
How would that happen? Like, who is imposing their view of gender upon you, sir? Like, I assume, sir, right? Like, you know, like, it doesn't, like, that's not happening to you. Nobody's imposing their view upon you, okay? You're imposing your view upon other people by telling trans people that they're not women or men or non-binary or whatever. Okay, that's you doing that. So stop projecting.
Conventions and practices inspired by gender theory are, on their own view, social conventions, which is why they have no more grounds to force people to participate in those social conventions by adhering to policies and expectations like reciting gender pronouns.
I just can't understand why they want to control someone's ability to present how they please, even if you think gender is rigid. Who gives a shit if someone wants to pretend they're a woman? they're a woman. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. It's just control that they try to exert over people. And also, usually it's just rooted in misogyny and homophobia.
When I apply for a job or a school, or maybe when I register for an app and it forces me to list my gender pronouns, it's forcing me to participate in.
Dude, are you kidding me? Come on. Come on. Oh, boo-hoo. Oh, boo-hoo. Oh, woe's you. You have to list your gender pronouns. Oh, no. Oh, the little baby. Oh, no. Oh, no. I have to list my gender pronouns. Oh, it's tyrannical. Oh, no. Shut the up. Go away. Nobody likes you.
What has already been admitted to be a social convention,
What's
according
next?
to the
I
very
had to tell my
same
name.
leading thinkers who introduced us to this whole theory about gender, and therefore
Wait till he learns that children learn about pronouns when they're in like 2nd grade.
imposing it on society is as equally tyrannical
Usually
as imposing
earlier,
the
actually.
traditional conventions. Again, if you use this claim
not-
that
okay.
gender norms are
Oh,
mere conventions in order to dismantle conservative or traditional
love this
notions
guy.
of gender, then you've also a priori dismantled progressive notions of gender as
priori.
conventions that cannot be imposed on anyone else.
It's not
And yet,
imposing anything on you.
somehow
Guess what? You can identify as he, him, okay? Nobody's saying you can't do that. They're just asking you, how do you identify? That's not imposing anything on you. You're imposing something on us by forcing us to assume that you're a man. That's you forcing it on us. You're projecting, sir. I assume, sir.
Oh, that's what's happening. We're expected to
trying to
recognize
respect his
as
gender
objective
preferences.
fact, and not just convention, the preferred pronouns and gender identity of others at work or at school, and there have
Hold on, I missed that.
recognized
What?
as objective fact, and not just convention, the preferred pronouns and gender identity of others at work or at school, and there have already
So you're saying that it's forceful, that you can't, people are forcing their worldview on you because you can't enforce your worldview on others. That's all you're saying. That's really stupid, man. That's like brain dead.
cases in which people have
That's like saying you're restricting my freedom by not allowing me to take away other people's freedom. That's all you're saying, is that you want to be able to take away other people's freedom to present and be identified as the way they want to, and they're taking away your freedom to not allow them that freedom. That's really stupid, dude.
faced severe consequences for refusing to participate in these new conventions. In the case
Yeah, because it's
ENV
disrespectful.
Gallagher's Bar and Lounge, the
Guess what? If you have a boss who's trans, right? If you have a slay queen trans woman boss, and then you go and use he, him for your boss's pronouns, they're probably gonna fire your ass. Because that's disrespectful as shit, okay? I don't care if they're a class trader manager or a CEO or whatever. She's a trans woman, all right? It's a matter of basic human respect to identify them the way that they would like to be identified. You do that for every cis person, and yet you won't do it for a trans person. You.
Ontario Human Rights Tribunal ruled that the owner of the bar had to pay significant damages to
Good.
3 different employees for not using their they them pronouns.
Good.
Which
They should
based
have
on
paid
what we've
more.
already discussed,
Whatever they paid,
that's
they should
like
have paid
saying
more.
my employer has to throw a Kwanzaa party for me, or I'm going to sue them for not adhering to my preferred social conventions.
Okay, if your employer throws specifically a Christmas party and says that if you celebrate Kwanzaa, you're not allowed here, yes, you can sue for that, okay? This is a false equivalency that you're creating here. If you want to be equivalent about it, yes, if your employers throw a Christmas party and some people aren't invited on account of not celebrating Christmas or not being Christian, that is something that you can absolutely sue for. And I think you should be allowed to. That's a good thing.
In Nelson v. Goodberry Restaurant, the BC, that is British Columbia Human Rights Tribunal, rendered a similar decision against a restaurant for not using the pronouns of a former employee. So when they dismantled our traditional recognition of sex as the means by which we identify others by reducing it all to mere conventions, at best they came up with
As opposed to reducing it to what genitalia you have or what chromosomes you have, which you don't even know your chromosomes, dude. I guarantee you do not know what your chromosomes are. You've never done a chromosomal test. You've never done a DNA swab. Shut the up.
means of being able to say that people should
got two
be
X
allowed to
chromosomes
live
for all you
according
know.
to whatever social conventions that they want. And since gender is a social convention, then individuals can choose their own theories about it and live according to those theories. But
Yes.
if that's your argument, What you absolutely cannot do is tell the rest of society
You can identify yourself the way that you want to identify yourself. You can't go around and dictate how others are identified. That's stupid. Also, I just realized the bottom button is not buttoned, man. Really? Really, dude? You're really going to be that unprofessional? Your bottom button is not buttoned. What's up with that?
to participate in these individualistic notions of gender by affirming those preferences verbally through compelled speech and institutional recognition. We should be able to look at that and say,
Everybody has pronouns,
okay, fine,
dipshit.
gender is a social construct, but biological sex is not. Sex is a verifiable fact based on empirical information that anyone can observe. If you dig up a
Yeah, and you can change it. Pretty cool.
grave in which all the soft tissue has long since disappeared, you can still tell the sex of a person
That's not even true.
without asking them.
Here, let's debunk that right now. Can you tell the sex of a person who's been dead? Can determine the sex of the remains using teeth and skull traits. How accurate is it? Out of the whole skeleton, the pelvis was shown to be the most accurate region in determining sex. However, full skeletal remains are a luxury very rarely enjoyed by anthropologists, and the pelvis may be fragmented or entirely missing in a forensic contest. And it's not even like error rate. Here we go. Error rates in sex determination of human skeletal remains. Let's see. Abstract. The possible fallibility of forensic methods has been under scrutiny for over a decade. Left out of the initial reviews were methods within forensic anthropology. Observer-based methods had a lower rate of error. Skull was shown to be the least accurate. Results showed no significant correlation between the number of traits being considered and the subsequent error rate in determining sex. Well, where's the error rate? Post-transition, you're closer to the sex than you transition to. That's true. Even if, okay, let's say that this is true, by the way. Let's say that you can determine the sex of somebody based on their skeletal remains, that you're biologically closer to the sex that you transition to after a certain period of time than you were beforehand. Like, that's why people get, like, that's how facial feminization surgeries work. That's how, like, puberty blockers work. Quality, not the quantity, when making the distinction between biologically male and female skeletons. Though it is beyond the scope of this paper, ideally this work can contribute to the examination of which skeletal traits are most accurate when making sex determination. The skull is shown to be the least reliable. By examining the skull as a whole, the average error rate was greatly reduced. Long bones were also examined for their efficacy in determining biological sex. Long bones had an intermediate average error rate. Okay, so there is some ability to determine the sex, but it's not the be-all end-all. The gathered data put their average error rate above 10%. Which can be problematic from an investigative standpoint. For the scapula and clavicle, pelvis was shown to be the most accurate region in determining sex. All portions of the skeleton besides the pelvis had an average error rate greater than 10%, which is usually considered unreliable in a forensic setting. It goes on to say that this is most likely due to the limited sample size. But according to this, unless you're looking at the pelvis, which is a rare find in skeletal remains, a rare undamaged pelvis, right? Like, it's above a 10% error rate. And your pelvis can vary as well. It's not a 100% thing. They cannot 100% determine your sex. That's the point. It's never an exact science. And HRT changes the body a lot. Yeah, exactly.
For their pronouns. Gender is not a necessary fact. It's, as we've all admitted, a social construct, something we invent for our own purposes as a society. It's something we assemble for our
Yeah, so let's talk about the use of it, you know? Like, what good does it do us to identify people who are born with vaginas as women, you know? Like, and then categorize them based upon that. It doesn't do us any good, okay? It's a useless construct.
own purposes, and therefore it's also something we can disassemble
a lot of
for our
overlap,
own purposes. So if you're going to assemble some theory about gender for your own purposes, I have just as much right to disassemble it for my own purposes and say,
But no. But your disassembly, quote unquote, is literally saying, I can call you whatever I want to call you, you know? Which I guess you can. I'm not saying like at threat of gunpoint that you can't do that, but people are going to think you're a piece of shit. You know, these people all whining and whinging about, oh my God, I'm going to get canceled for this and that. Getting canceled is not getting killed, dude. You'll be fine. You'll live.
I'm not participating in your own peculiar social conventions. But what neither of us can do is say that biological sex isn't a fact.
They don't want freedom of speech. They want freedom from consequence. Freedom from consequence is what they want. This is indisputable now. Okay, because the consequence of you misgendering a trans person is that you're going to get people saying, hey, f you, man. you, man. Hey, I have the right to say that. Freedom of speech, right? That's my social construct is I identify you as an asshole, okay? And you can't deconstruct that because if you want to deconstruct other people's social constructs, then I'll deconstruct yours. You're not a man, you're an asshole.
And that the physical reality of sex ought to be conditioned by our social
is.
conventions, as if such a thing were even possible.
What is this reality? Why are we looking at a baby foot? What? Why? This is such weird footage. I don't like this.
By our social conventions, as if such a thing were even possible. Reality isn't contingent upon us. We are contingent upon reality. And if you don't think so, if you think the laws of gravity are just a convention that we arbitrarily invented and can just as easily recalibrate to suit some other preference, then give it a try. Change the laws.
Gender is not a scientific theory. It's a social construct. Okay? And sex can be changed. And gravity changes when you leave the Earth. Okay? The gravity constant on Earth is not the same as the gravity constant on Mars, or on the moon, or in the vacuum of space. All right? It changes based upon where you are in the universe. So gravity is not a constant in the universe. All right?
Laws of gravity in our textbooks and our engineering manuals and see if we can still fly airplanes. Social conventions are relative to us. But physical reality is not. The laws of physics and biology don't change.
The physical reality is that you're missing the bottom button on your sweater, and it's really starting to bother me. You should really get that fixed.
Because of our wishful thinking or our emotional longing. So if someone tells you that you have to have pronouns on your resume or your student application or your email signature, or that your children have to participate in exercises at their publicly funded schools designed to determine what their gender pronouns are, you and I should have every right to say, well...
Everybody has gender pronouns, dude. Everybody. You have them, and you're he, him. I have them, I'm he, him. Katie has them, she's she, they. Okay? Everybody has gender pronouns. You just haven't sat down to really think about yours. I have. And in my worldview, that makes me more of a man than you. I'm just saying.
Well, isn't that just a social convention? And if it is...
I'm sure of my masculinity.
Well, it isn't one that I adhere to. So I'm not going to participate in that. And in the same way that you don't have to participate in like my daily rosary. And if they say you have to, well, then you can accuse them of imposing a social convention on you, which is...
What are you going to do? Pull down their pants and look at their genitals? You don't know what they're packing. You have no clue. Okay? You assume it based off what they look like. Everybody does that. I'm doing it now to you. You could have a big soaking vagina for all I know. I don't know. All I have to go off of is your word that you do not have a big soaking wet vagina. Okay? I have to assume, or a micro penis. I have to assume that you have like a regular normal size, probably a little bit below average penis, based off of what you look like, okay? Gravitational acceleration changes, but the gravitational constant isn't G, and G isn't G, it's capital G, and that does not change. Okay, yes, that's what I meant. The gravitational constant from Earth over to other planets does change. There is a gravitational constant based upon the mass of an object, which does not change. Sorry if that was confusing. My point is, gravity has the potential to change in some aspects, okay? That was my point. But the broader point is that gravitational theory is a scientific theory. Gender is a social construct, okay? So there's no comparison there. They're completely different ideas.
As they've already admitted, tyrannical. If conservatives can't do it, then neither can progressives. But they are doing it. They're getting people fired, or they're suing them, or worse, for not adhering to their conventions about gender. It's almost as if they believe their whole theory about gender is a fact of reality.
That's capitalism, baby. I'm sorry. Oh, you don't like getting fired? Wow, that sounds like a problem with capitalism. You know what I want? I want a system where bigots like you can live free, okay? For free. Regardless of your ideology, you can live for free, no job required. You don't have to go on YouTube and pull this stupid bullshit and get all your subscriber bucks from these religious zealots who watch you. You don't have to do any of that in my worldview. You can just sit back, let some cash roll in. Not even cash. You just get handed the shit that you need. Wouldn't that be great? That'd be fantastic, all right? That's all I'm saying. I want that for you and me. Where was I going with this? I don't even remember. F you.
Rather than a mere convention. And if that's what they want to claim, then we have to return back to the condition of treating gender not as a social construct, but something...
Getting fired from your job. I don't even think the job should be a thing, so you won't get fired for believing the stupid shit that you do under my worldview.
Thing that is factually based in objective reality, and therefore has to meet certain standards of evidence and proof. if you want others to recognize it as such. And at that point, the debate is no longer about the imposition of social conventions or making people feel included, but rather which beliefs about sex and gender hold up to rational scrutiny, which one makes more sense and is more grounded in scientific observation and logical reasoning. Because
So what you're saying is, based upon somebody being born with a vagina, you think that they should have a specific role in society that you dictate. That's f***ed up, man. Nobody likes that except for you and your posse of freaks. Most people want freedom from their sexual chains, okay? From the chains of the biology which they've been prescribed by the randomosity of the universe, all right? Most people also want you to fix your button on your sweater, man. It's really starting to bug me. Like really, it's not that hard, man. It's really not that hard.
Because all of those claims about gender being a spectrum and people being born in the wrong body and the need for gender affirming care and medical intervention, none of these things are observable outside of the feeling scientific observation and logical reasoning. Because all of those claims about gender being a spectrum and people being born in the wrong body and the need for gender affirming care and medical intervention, none of these things are observable outside.
Gender affirming surgery has been performed since 1931 and is shown to increase the quality of life in transgender patients, with 91% of transgender female patients reporting improved quality of life after vaginoplasty. Seems pretty observable to me, man.
Outside of the feelings or thoughts of those who experience such feelings about themselves. But feelings aren't proof of anything. I have a very strong feeling that I should get 1 million views on my YouTube channel every month. But reality doesn't bend to our feelings no matter how strong they are. And just as I have to accept...
How many views does he get? 98K? Too many. You don't
the fact that I don't get 1 million views on my channel every month, just because one...
By the way, this is a common misconception, is that trans people think that things are there that aren't, or that things aren't there that are, and that's not true. That's called delusion. Okay, trans people are not under any delusions as to what's there, yeah, delusion, right? Like, anorexia is a delusional mindset, because you literally think that you are fat when you're not. You see fat that is not there. Trans people do not see body parts that are not there. They see the lack thereof or the presence of a body part, which they either do or do not want to be there respectively. Okay? Like, that's what gender dysphoria is, I should say. Not necessarily being trans, but that's what gender dysphoria is, since we always conflate those two. And wanting to rectify that is not bad. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just you see something wrong with that because you want people to be upset and miserable. That's it. You just want people to be miserable. You want people to submit to your worldview, which you claim we're doing. It's all projection. It's always just projection. Like, he just wants us to submit to his worldview. Again, man, fix your button.
Person has certain feelings doesn't mean the rest of society has to affirm those feelings. That gets us back into certain tyrannical impositions, which no liberal democracy should be willing to entertain. But biological sex is observable and empirical.
On their shirts.
Understanding ourselves according to observable sexuality is a paradigm that has worked for human civilization for as long as there has been human civilization. In fact, we've built the most advanced civilization on such tradition.
Despite efforts from people like you, we built the most advanced civilization, and it was not on tradition. It was always it was always people going outside of the bubble. Always people going outside of that bubble that people like you constructed in order to build civilization. Do not take credit for that, you goddamn degenerate.
So,
disgusting.
If it ain't broke,
you don't take credit for that.
Fix.
What the f have you built? A disgusting YouTube channel. That's what you built. A YouTube channel with a little bit over 100,000 subscribers that you suck some money into from ad revenue, right? You contribute nothing to society. Nothing. Zilch, nada, not a thing. You take from society. You just take. You just take. You sit here and you pull from it, all right? So don't sit here and pretend for 2 seconds that you gave a modicum of effort or time or resources to any of us. Any of us. You are a useless parasite. That's what you are.
And our attempts to fix it so far seem to have broken a lot of things. So
no, please finish.
I think we should go back to that tradition that we originally dismantled. Can I ask you to stick around for 1 extra minute?
I'm done with you. Useless parasite. Fix your button. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you want to see more, hit the notification bell to be notified when I upload. If you enjoy my content, you enjoy what I do, I really appreciate any financial help that I can get. Go to youtube.com/AlecGunterTTV/join. You got some awesome benefits, such as seeing early videos, awesome emotes that you can use in the comments of YouTube videos, and a sweet badge next to your name. So if that sounds interesting to you, I'd really appreciate if you join. It is cheaper than the cost of a blowjob from your mom. So with all that being said, thank you again for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.